For generations, Stuart Little has been cherished as a warm, whimsical story about belonging, family, and adventure. A tale that many first encountered through the wildly popular film adaptations that debuted at the end of the 20th century. Audiences around the world grew up with the image of a small, white mouse navigating life among humans, overcoming obstacles and earning his place in a loving family. Yet, in recent days a surprising revelation has been sweeping through book lovers, film fans and literary scholars alike. The titular character in E.B. White's original novel was never meant to be a mouse in the first place. To understand the nature of this surprise, it's crucial to distinguish between the fictional universe of the Stuart Little films and the original literary work on which they are based. The movies, released between 1999 and the mid-2000s, embraced a more conventional family fantasy. An orphan mouse character adopted by human parents, learning life lessons and capturing hearts with his courage and charm. In cinematic form, Stuart is clearly depicted as a mouse, complete with fur, whiskers and paws, voiced by prominent actors and animated in a way that brings childlike nuance to the character. This portrayal has been deeply ingrained in popular culture for decades. However, the roots of Stuart Little lie in a very different literary origin. A 1945 children's book written by E.B. White, a seminal author whose work Charlotte's Web remains a cornerstone of American children's literature. In White's text, the character of Stuart Little is not an animal character adopted into a human family. Instead, he is described as a small human child, no bigger than a mouse. The narrative places him as the biological son of the Littles, appearing at birth with physical traits reminiscent of a mouse, a sharp nose, a tail, whiskers, yet still categorized as a human within the story's world. People.com+1. For many lifelong fans, especially those introduced to the world of Stuart through film or television, this revelation has been deeply surprising. How something so fundamental to a character's identity could be so widely misunderstood speaks both to the power of adaptation and the malleability of storytelling traditions across media formats. The film's choice to depict Stuart as an adopted mouse, fully animated in mouse form, was likely driven by the visual and emotional accessibility of that representation. After all, audiences are quick to connect with anthropomorphized animal characters in family entertainment, where traits like bravery, humor, and vulnerability are amplified through an appealing and symbolic form. But in the original novel, Stuart's physicality straddles a nuanced line between human and animal. The text opens by noting that Stuart's parents were stunned at the unusual size and features of their new son. Everybody noticed that he was not much bigger than a mouse, White wrote, and went on to describe how, in every physical regard, Stuart resembled a mouse. His tiny stature, his whiskered face, his delicate tail. Yet structurally he was still a human child. This subtle but significant distinction, that he was a human with mouse-like characteristics, rather than a literal mouse, has been lost in popular memory, overshadowed by the vivid imagery of the films. GeoNews. The recent wave of fan discussion began when readers and social media users started responding to the rediscovered detail, expressing disbelief and amusement. Many reacted on social platforms with shock, humor, and nostalgia. In some cases confessing that they had spent entire lifetimes believing that Stuart was a mouse just like the one in the movies. I've just now learned that in the Stuart Little book, Stuart is not actually a mouse but a human boy who looks like a mouse, and I don't know how to process this, one commentator wrote, encapsulating the bewildered amusement that has characterized much of the conversation. Tyler. Scholars of children's literature point out that White's original intention was less about creating a conventional animal fantasy and more about crafting a metaphorical exploration of identity, difference, and acceptance. By positioning Stuart as human yet physically anomalous, White invites readers to engage with questions of belonging in a world where societal norms often define what is normal or acceptable. Stuart's small size and unusual features become symbolic of difference itself, and his adaptability, intelligence, and resilience transcend physical form to explore what it really means to be part of a family and a community. Interestingly, the novel's publication history reflects an awareness of how tricky this distinction could be for readers. Early editions described Stuart as being born to the Littles, while later iterations softened the language to say he arrived, possibly in response to confusion or discomfort about how a human child could be described in such fantastical terms. Critics at the time, including some librarians and educators, questioned the suitability of such an identity for children's literature in the mid-20th century, citing concerns that the blurred line between human and fantastical features might confuse young readers. GeoNews. The broader cultural impact of this distinction extends beyond a simple literary curiosity. It reflects the ways in which stories evolve as they are retold, reimagined, and reinterpreted across media. Film adaptations, especially those targeting family audiences, often prioritize visual clarity and emotional accessibility. A clear, fully animated mouse character allows for immediate emotional identification, particularly for children. In contrast, a tiny human with mouse-like features invites deeper reflection but may not translate as cleanly in a visual medium designed for mass appeal. Yet this divergence between original text and adaptation highlights how storytelling can take on lives of its own. For many children and adults, the image of Stuart Little as an actual mouse, adventurous, loyal, and brave, is the definitive version regardless of literary nuance. That collective memory says as much about the power of film and cultural transmission as it does about White's original creative vision. Beyond the surprise factor, this revelation about Stuart Little has sparked renewed interest in White's novel itself. Bookstores and online communities have seen increased discussion about revisiting the source material, prompting readers to explore the complexities of the original narrative that may have been overlooked in favor of its more familiar cinematic counterpart. In a sense, this moment has revitalized public curiosity about a classic story in a new way, inviting comparisons between text and adaptation and encouraging readers to engage with literature more deeply.